Hi everyone, evening, and welcome to the next edition of the Taylor Vinters Founder Series. My name's Geoff Dragon, I'm a solicitor here at Taylor Vinters, and today we have Mikesh Udani joining us from Oxford-based Albus Health. Mikesh, hello.
Hi Geoff, how are you?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. How are you? You're excited? It's exciting. But for those of you watching who don't know Taylor Vinters, we're a full-service law firm specialising in entrepreneurship, innovation and technology. I myself, I act for our emerging companies team. So really I deal with companies that have the capability to scale up, receive investment and grow and expand their business in the technology sectors, which is, we're sector agnostic, so that's quite wide-ranging, quite a broad scope of different companies. And we assist them with all aspects of their scaling up life, such as company structuring, fundraisings, commercial contracts, and share option incentive schemes. For those of you who don't know the Founder Series, essentially it's our little creation, and it's really our deep dive into some of those amazing clients that we work for. We get to know the people such as Mikesh, so the kind of the founders behind those clients, and really see what makes them tick, how they ended up where they are today, and what their challenges and their kind of big successes are, and what their advice is. What can they give back to other founders in our community and our network. If you watched the first edition of this season 3 of the Founder Series, you'd have seen my colleague Kieran took it, and thank you very much for Kieran for stepping in there. I'm now back in the seat to kind of continue my one-man quest, I guess, to be the legal answer to Jonathan Ross. I've even grown my hair out quite like him in lockdown, so we're getting closer and closer. Mikesh, we will of course come to you, and we will start our little conversation shortly, but a few housekeeping announcements to make at the very start for those of you watching live. There is most importantly, there is a Q&A button. It's along the kind of bar at the bottom of your Zoom screens. How this kind of, conversation is going to run is Mikesh and myself will chat and I've got some pre-prepared questions for him, hopefully lasting about the first half of the hour that we have together. That will then hopefully lead on to some Q&As from everyone watching. So if you have a question, anything that you think of whilst Mikesh and I are chatting, then please use the Q&A function in Zoom to jot your question down. I believe you can upvote and downvote question, or maybe just upvote. Downvoting seems harsh, but you can definitely upvote questions that you want an answer to, and then at the end, Mikesh and I will do our best to run through as many of those as possible before 6 o'clock. I actually think that's pretty sure that's most of the housekeeping. Obviously, if you hear a fire alarm, it is not a drill. You will know where your nearest exits are, and I guess it's every man, woman or child to themselves, depending on where the fire is. So there you go. Mikesh, welcome. Sorry for rambling, and you've been waiting very patiently. How is your evening going so far?
It's going okay. It's been a very intense day, but this is going to be a great end, or at least a partial end, before I go take a break and get back to work at night.
Perfect. Well, at least we can, hopefully, fingers crossed, it can be enjoyable for you.
I'm sure it will be.
Obviously, you're co-founder and CEO of Albus Health, and we will get onto Albus and all the great things you're doing. But as I mentioned at the start, the Founder Series is really our chance to get to know the founders and the people behind the businesses, kind of pierce that veil, if you will. So I thought at the start, maybe we could spend just a little bit of time talking about your background and actually or the events that led up to Albus, and just you as a founder, if that sounds like a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, perfect. So obviously, we've been talking in the run up to this, and you've had quite a varied background. I think it's probably fair to say. So you spent time in India, you spent time in the US, you spent time in the UK. I believe you were at Deutsche Bank for a long time. You then switched to a master's degree at Oxford in computer science, before finally switching to to become a fellow in the biomedical engineering department at Oxford.
That's right, yeah.
So obviously hugely varied. It seems like you've done or managed to fit quite a lot in a short space of time. But actually also to the outside eye, that the final switch to the biomedical department is what would eventually lead to Albus. But that seems like quite a dramatic change to what you've been doing previously. So what kind of, I guess, what kind of prompted that switch?
Yeah, okay, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned it that way. Yeah, it does seem like a switch, but it was more of a deliberate step to get into healthcare and learn about how to build solutions, technology-based solutions for healthcare, and the transition from my master's program to the biodesign program, where I was a fellow, was to help me do that. And so basically, yes, you're right in that I did my undergrad in mathematics and computer science, and that was the time when I was really enjoying the tech, and I was quite fascinated by machine learning and all of the different capabilities that it has. But then after my undergrad and first masters, for whatever reasons, I decided to join banking and spent some time there. But about a year and a half into it, I was convinced it wasn't my thing. So it wasn't something that I wanted to do in the long term. But I spent a lot of time thinking, if not banking, what is it that I want to do? And spoke to a lot of friends, had a lot of sleepless nights. At one point, I was trying a bunch of different things, which seemed quite different. I was thinking, should I do an MBA? Should I do a master's? Should I maybe move to London with Deutsche Bank in a different team? Should I start a social venture with a friend in India? And all of these seemed exciting, but like very different in what they would lead to. But ultimately, while thinking about all of this, I realized what I really wanted to do was to build technology-based products in either healthcare or education. And then it was about finding the most optimum path to take me there. I finally decided to do a master's in computer science to kind of sharpen my skills, which had rusted by then. And the objective when I came here was quite clear, to learn the technical side that would eventually help me into building products in healthcare. So I focused my master's program. My master's thesis was on using machine learning for risk stratification for a cardiac condition. And at that time, I was actively looking for roles or opportunities that would help me learn more in that space, so that eventually I could build my own product to start my own team. So that's how it happened. It was more of, I knew what I wanted to do and then trying to find the best steps to get there.
And the best path to get there. No, perfect. And it sounds like your decisions were driven by when you were talking about either healthcare or education, there's kind of like an underpinned need to want to do something that gives back in a way. So not just a commercialized product, which is really cool, but doesn't necessarily help people in general, but actually a need to, or a want to give something back in whatever you did. Is that kind of a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all give back in our own ways, and we all add value in our way. It doesn't matter if you're in banking or you're a lawyer, you're a teacher, you're a historian. I think we all make our own contributions. For me personally, healthcare and education seemed a couple of areas that I was fundamentally very passionate about. I was very lucky to be in good health and have access to good education. My family ensured that I had very good education from a very young age, and I saw the benefits of that. And I thought if more people had good health and good education, it would be great.
Perfect. And do you feel like your varied background, where you've had quite a few different experiences, do you feel that has helped you in your current role as a CEO and a founder of Albus Health? And if so, kind of in what ways have you kind of experienced that, I guess?
Yeah, I certainly think the different things that I tried, the opportunity to spend some time in banking, to do some research, they've added a lot of experience, and that has certainly helped me. So for example, the mathematics and computer science that I studied, the training as one who's studying those subjects was very, very useful. There's a certain perspective to problem solving, a kind of rigor, trying to bring structure to things that seem very complex and chaotic, trying to optimize solutions while focusing on something that works and actually solves a problem. So the way of thinking about things that I picked up from my studies and by meeting people and by studying those subjects helped shape the way I think about a lot of problems today, even as a CEO or as a co-founder, and that has been very, very useful. So I don't do much computer science or math work in the company right now, which is unfortunate for me because I absolutely love it. But it's kind of fortunate for the company because we have people who are far smarter than me and far more skilled in these aspects who are doing the tech work. But the way of thinking is still something that has remained, and I use it in a range of different aspects. Then another thing which I was very fortunate to get through these experiences is the chance to meet a lot of different people, and people who had different perspectives, different styles, different definitions of what success and failure meant. So that was very, very useful. In my first job at Deutsche Bank, I remember my super boss, who was the managing director of the fixed income derivatives trading team. He was an extremely inspiring figure. So it was my first job, and I was still, just out of college. And working with him, I learned what it truly meant to take responsibility and ownership for a task. He was also a remarkable leader. He was extremely kind and patient with everyone, especially people who were junior in the team and in other teams. So those are things that were very inspiring to me, and they've shaped how I think about my own work and my own team. And largely, very broadly, doing different things helped to get that clarity that what I really, really want to do is build products in healthcare and in education. And that is something that has remained. So even when things are really, really rough, not for a single moment do I regret what I'm doing. And that comes in very handy as a founder and CEO.
No, of course. That sounds good. And that kind of, I think that leads us quite nicely onto actually Albus Health and your company now and kind of what it's doing. Before we get there, let's just kind of take a break from the more serious aspects. And I've got a few quick fire questions just to get us to, before we delve into company, just to get us to truly know you. So just kind of quick fire answers, whatever comes first to mind. And we're kind of probably going to ask them to all of the founders in the series and just build up a nice picture of the sorts of clients that we get to work for. What's the most daring thing you've done other than start a startup?
Other than, I think, if you'd asked me just the question, I would have said, yeah, probably starting the company. I was in debt that time, and it was coming back a pretty crazy thing to do. What's the most daring thing? I think when I was applying for my master's program, there was a point when I was at a friend's wedding, and it was an Indian wedding, so it was 4 days long. And at the end of the second day, I got an email from the admissions committee saying you have to solve these questions, these 4 math questions, and send us the answer in the next 48 hours. And I was really not in a state to answer those questions, and not in a place where I had the resources or the internet to do that. And I just ignored it for 2 days and wrote back to them later saying, I'm in a planned holiday. Unless you extend the deadline for 2 weeks, there's no way I'm going to be able to do it, and I'll withdraw my application. And at that time, it felt okay. But looking back, that was the admission that finally took me to Oxford. So,
oh wow,
I'm very grateful. I did write that email, and it did go through.
It's almost like the perfect bluff. Perfect. Thank you. Obviously, we don't want to dwell on lockdown. I know everyone is a little bit sick and tired of it by now, but we can't really escape it given that we're doing this over Zoom and not obviously not in person. A lot of people spent a lot of time in lockdown kind of binge watching Netflix or Amazon Prime. What was your lockdown binge in terms of TV, if there was one?
No, I don't watch much TV, but I rewatched a lot of Rick and Morty episodes. And I started watching the series called Indian Matchmaking, but I saw a couple of episodes and then it fizzled out.
Yeah, I watched one episode, and it was kind of interesting. I think there was a lawyer on there as well, so I kind of watched a
Yes,
bit,
there
but then
was,
it
yeah.
was I just didn't want to put myself through it. I've watched too much trash. That was the issue. Most importantly, and just to finish off on the quick fires, what do you do to relax at the end of at the end of a hard day, week, startup year? What's your R&R?
At the end of a hard day, I really like running. So I'd probably go for a run or a workout. I talk to my 4-year-old nephew almost every day. So he's an absolute stress buster. At the end of the week, I sleep a lot. Weekends, I rarely ever wake up before 10 a.m.
Perfect.
And I see some close friends, play a little bit of music, go out. Probably on an annual basis, I try to have a few days at a stretch, but I'm not looking at emails. I'm not doing any work. A couple of years ago, I did a silent meditation retreat for 10 days. I thought it'd be relaxing. It was not relaxing, one of the most intense things I've ever done. But probably the practice over time has helped me relax.
And was most of the stress in just trying not to speak, not to make a sound there?
No, not speaking was perfectly fine. I was very happy to not speak and not being spoken to. I was completely okay to not read and write. But it was just meditating is very tiring. And, when you're shut completely from the rest of the world, it's your own thoughts that come out. And a lot of them are exactly the reason you went there to calm down. And you have no other option but to face them head on and make peace with them. So like I said, those 10 days were intense, but the practices that I picked up there have helped me down the line.
Amazing. Perfect. Well, thank you. So why we're all here, Albus Health, we're here to delve into the company and find out a little bit more about it. So I guess I didn't give Albus Health too much of an introduction at the start on purpose, just because you will talk to it with much more clarity and understanding than I will. So I guess, in your own words for those listening, what does Albus Health do?
Sure. So we are, as you mentioned, we are an Oxford spin-out company. Fundamentally, we make systems for intelligent symptom monitoring. So continuous monitoring of symptoms, in particular nocturnal symptoms, is important in a range of therapeutic areas. Kind of a prime example are respiratory conditions. So just as an example, pharmaceutical companies and universities, they spend billions and billions in running clinical studies, but they still struggle to get good quality symptom data when people are at home over a period of time. At the same time, if you just look at, as an example, one condition for asthma, there are hundreds of millions of preventable asthma attacks that happen every year. And one of the biggest reasons why they keep happening are because the early warning signs are missed. So when people are at home, they miss some of the symptoms and they only realize it when it's too late and they have to be rushed to the emergency room. So we developed a small non-contact tabletop device that can automatically monitor a range of symptoms and environmental metrics without the individual having to do or wear anything. And so how it works is when you walk into a room with automated lights, there are sensors in the corner which pick up the motion and turn the lights on. We use similar sensors to pick up the small movements in the body when someone breathes, and then use algorithms to pick up the respiratory patterns from there. And then we have other sensors which pick up information about the physiology of the room. And because this is completely passive and it's just plug and play, you plug it on and it starts working, it's suitable for people of all ages, regardless of the technical background or their geographical location. And it does not require any human contact. It does not require any contact between two humans or between a human and the device itself. So it is something that it can work seamlessly in the background for years and years. Even if you forget you have a condition, it still keeps monitoring, and with time it gets a reliable symptom.
So kind of a hugely disruptive piece of, I guess, diagnostic and detective equipment, really, essentially, kind of a game changer in the asthmatic field.
Well, yeah, it's I would say it's broadly for chronic respiratory conditions and for other therapeutic areas. We're starting with asthma on the healthcare side, but when we work with pharmaceutical companies or researchers, this is something that they use clinical studies in a range of different therapeutic areas and phases. So yeah, hopefully we would give the value and alleviate some of the challenges and frustrations, both on the research and on the healthcare side with this.
Oh, amazing, incredible. And you kind of mentioned you're an Oxford spin out. So obviously we talked about you being a fellow at Oxford, and then you span out. How did the idea for Albus Health come about? Was it tied into your research as a fellow, or was it something you spotted kind of independently?
No, it was very much tied into the research program that I was a part of. It's called the Oxford Biodesign Program. It's now gone into a few changes, and it was called Global Innovation Fellowship. It's now called something else. But basically, it's on the principle of biodesign, which is needs-based innovation. So it was a program which was designed to bring people from different skills together. So I had a background in mathematics and computer science, but in finance. My co-founder, William, he was a full-time doctor. And our third colleague was an electrical engineer. So the point was to bring people from different skills together and take them through a journey of what is known as needs-based innovation. So we had to spend a lot of time thinking about the problem without thinking anything about the solutions. So what would happen is every morning we'd go to the hospital and we'd just stand in the corner and keep noting down different problems. And the problems were in a range of different areas: respiratory care, geriatric care, oncology, DVT, PE. So what we would do is try to understand what the problem was, who was facing the problem, what would be the outcome if the problem was solved. And we came up with about 250 different problems. And for each of them, we found out what had people done to solve it, why it was not solved, what was the impact, was it just a problem in Oxford or everywhere else in the world. And then in stages, we came down from this very large set of problems to about 2 or 3 different problems. And when we came down to this small set, we knew nothing about the solution. We knew absolutely nothing about what we would do to solve it, but we knew everything about the problem. We knew what the patient said, we knew what the doctor said, what the family said, what was the concern from healthcare payers, what had people done to solve it, why it was not solved, what were people paying for it, what would they pay if it was solved. And with all of this information, we then started thinking very broadly about all different possible solutions. So anything from a sticky note on the fridge to a completely mechanized robot at home feeding medication, anything that we could conjure in our minds was a potential solution. So we then started with a very long list of possible solutions that would help address the 2-3 problems that we had identified. Then in stages came down to just one solution for one problem, looking at what is it that we as a team can build, what can be delivered in 2 to 3 years' time with reasonably limited resources. So anything like drug development was out of the window because it takes 10, 15 years, and a lot of money and time to build that. What is it that would be clinically adoptable while commercially scalable? And once we had identified that one concept for that one problem, we started prototyping and building it, and then eventually spun out and got some funding. And 3 years down, I'm speaking to you.
Perfect. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, it's all come to a great point so far because you're here tonight. So, I guess lucky you and well done. Obviously, I think it's really interesting. That kind of the method of let's identify all the problems and actually get to really know the problem well, because once you have a good handle on the problem, there may be many solutions, but it gives you a greater understanding and greater base on which to actually consider those solutions, as you said, which is I think quite a good point to make actually. So thank you for kind of speaking to that. Startup life is never, you've alluded to it, it's never easy. It can be quite all-consuming at times as well. Have there been any kind of key challenges or hurdles that the company has had to overcome to get to this stage where we're talking tonight 3 years down the line?
Well, I think as you mentioned, with startups is always tough. So one common challenge which probably all startups faced, which we face as well, is to take decisions when there is very little or no information available, or when the information is conflicting. Even when you ask experts, if you ask 4 experts, 2 will tell you one thing and 2 will tell you another. All very smart people with the best of intentions, but it's just different perspectives. So taking decisions at the face of uncertainty or conflicting opinions has always been a challenge. It was something similar during the pandemic. We were deciding whether we should focus and pivot completely to do something on COVID, or we should keep onto the track of chronic respiratory conditions. So that's been a common challenge, a theme for a lot of the challenges. Another one is to really commercialize very quickly and make sure we're not just a research lab and we are balancing the commercial aspects of development with rigorous R&D with a very small amount of money. And this is true for every startup. So it's nothing unique to Albus. Just in general, for medical technology, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. But we realize more and more that it's very important not to neglect the commercial aspect and make sure we get to the point of a sustainable business as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So that's been quite challenging, but it's also a challenge which to some degree we have taken steps towards, and that's proved to be very beneficial.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned, obviously you mentioned the need to want to get to a commercial kind of, some commercial viability as quickly as possible and some stability there. And you talked about obviously the coronavirus and as many companies, it's kind of a theme, for an unofficial theme, I guess, for this season of the Founder Series, is the kind of the pivoting nature of what people have done during the coronavirus. And on the face of it, you have a product which could actually be used. You could pivot, you could use it quite. There's an avenue for you to pivot there, and for it to have applications with coronavirus. And obviously that would, that there is a route to commercialization potentially quicker through having a coronavirus product when there's a big demand for it. But it sounds as though the actual pivot to become a coronavirus product was not a decision that you went for in the end.
Yeah, that's right.
And you can't maybe go into too much detail around board decisions and etc. and what was discussed, but what were some of the conversations, or what were some of the considerations that the company had when deciding whether or not to pivot? Because lots of people have, and quite a few companies have had to, but actually quite a few have also weighed up the decision and decided not to. So it's there's no right or wrong, but it's just interesting to kind of discuss some of those considerations that you had, I guess.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think in general, when deciding on a pivot, or deciding to focus or refocus or shift our focus, the basic considerations are: what is it that we'd have to do to reach significant milestones and make a significant difference? And secondly, what is it going to cost? And when I say cost, it's cost in time, in resources, in impact, in opportunity. So we spent a lot of time thinking about COVID, what we could help with during the pandemic. When I describe my product to you, it does seem on the surface that, wow, this is something that you can use. There are so many different applications. And the deeper we got into it, the more we understood that the needs of the hour were changing and evolving quite rapidly. So what people were most desperate to know and most desperate to get solutions for in March is very different from what people need right now. Also, our understanding of the disease itself was very limited in the beginning. I would say even now, it's not phenomenal. A lot of the publications don't have statistical significance, but well, we're all doing the best we can with whatever limited information we have. So it was just constantly evolving, and we'd have to do a lot of work and a lot of development in directions that were kind of shifting with time to be able to put together something that would make that significant scalable impact. Now, it was possible. It's not that it was impossible, but that would mean that it's the only thing that we did. That is the only thing everybody in the company did. That's the one thing that we put all our energy and resources into. And in terms of the cost that it would have, it would mean that we deviated from the chronic respiratory condition or the wider therapeutic area monitoring that we had started with and that we were making good progress on. So it didn't seem like in the long term it would be the right thing to do. And in terms of impact, what impact a ventilator had in April is very different from what impact a ventilator is going to have in say October or in March next year. But at the same time, when we look at those with chronic respiratory conditions, that is something that's not going away. So by shifting focus from there, we will be ignoring a wide population that has been facing a lot of challenges, and even more during COVID, and probably down the line. And so in terms of impact, also it was a big cost. And in terms of opportunity or a commercial opportunity, there were a lot of things that were unclear. And how would this work out? How would we continue to be a sustainable business over a long period of time while doing something for the pandemic? I mean, we were all motivated to do whatever we could, but it was also important that we survived and we came out as a company. If we don't survive, the best of intentions are of no value. So thinking about all of that, we decided to continue on our track. We tested a few things. We are still testing a few things related to COVID, but we've largely kept our track.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense as well, based on just what you were saying, because you have a potentially large customer base already in healthcare who actually, the opportunity is there. They need your product as soon as possible as well. So it would, it's interesting how you said, yes, you could go to COVID, but we don't quite know how that's going to look going forward. And actually, it would be almost ignoring the large group of people that actually need you as soon as possible now already. So I think I know how you will answer the next question, but kind of knowing what you know now after the decision not to pivot, I'm assuming it's, there's no regrets about that at all. It is you absolutely, stand by the decisions made for the exact reasons you just gave us.
Yeah, that's right. I think I would stand by the decisions that we made. I think overall, as a company, we made a good decision to be doing what we are doing now. We spent a lot of time and energy and lots of early morning calls and late night calls into trying and testing a few ideas, thinking what would work, what didn't work, but ultimately it was the right decision. And thankfully, we decided that way because we made a lot of progress over the last 6 months, or in fact, the last 4 months in the direction in which we're going. So I'm happy about the decision that we've taken.
Of course, and it sounds like you suffer from the same kind of jumbled up time that I do, and like all time since March is just condensed or lengthened, and I have no idea how many months it's been. And it just kind of surprises you when you actually take stock. But
I think the point is pre-COVID and post-COVID. That's the framing of time in my mind.
Absolutely, no, I'm with you on that one. So obviously, let's move away from COVID and go to more, I guess happier times. I've got 2 more questions to ask you. Before I do, to everyone watching this live, please do make sure that you're asking some questions. If you have questions for Mikesh, after 5 minutes or so, we're going to come to some Q&As. You can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just if you have any questions, please do type them in, and we will do our best to. Well, I will ask them, and Mikesh will do his best to answer them. So. Obviously, Mikesh, you have all the pressure there, and I have none, but still.
No, this is a delight. It's an absolute pleasure.
Perfect. So some more happy times. Obviously, we've spoken a bit about the challenges, and we've spoken a bit about kind of the decisions and pressures you've had to face during COVID, and whether or not to pivot. People. There is a flip side to the startup world, which is the successes that you have along the way. As you reach new milestones with the company. So what's kind of been some of your kind of top successes, your kind of, I guess, top of the roller coaster moments for you so far in your journey?
I see. Well, in terms of moments, I think some of the results related to funding have been very exciting. I remember the first time we had some funding guaranteed. It was a small amount. I think it was 45K or something, and that would unlock some other funding. And I was in a meeting with my co-founder with a couple of other people, and we saw that email in the middle of a meeting, and we were just absolutely thrilled. And we were at a cafe, and it was 1 p.m. and both of us went up to the cafe and got a Jägermeister shot. And barista was just looking at us like, "Why you guys crazy? What are you doing?" So those things have been quite great, and that again leading up to very recently we got the AI in Health and Care Award, which we're all very excited about. It's a large project that we'll be doing with Imperial College, with Birmingham Hospital, Asthma UK, Oxford HSN, across 2 hospitals, and really rolling this out to children. And we're all very, very excited about that. Then again, the contract with our first paying customer, who happens to be one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the space, that had been extremely fruitful and exciting. It was again, we had to put in a lot of thought, effort into making sure that we work towards sustainable business and we commercialize as soon as possible. And having that contract in was over the time it's proved to be a very good high to have, which has helped future highs as well. And I think generally, I mean, it's not so much of a roller coaster moment, but I think a constant high for me in particular has been to be able to work with my team. I couldn't be more fortunate. I'm just so lucky to be working with the people who I am. So that's like an everyday high. It's a constant underlying high that I've had in the last 3 years.
No, of course. It's good that you're making the most of the highs with a Jägermeister shot on, like, properly. I think they need to be properly celebrated. So my only hope is that you had Red Bull as well, because otherwise
I've gotten over the Jägermeister phase, and it was 3.5 years ago, and it's fine.
It's fine. We all have them.
I'm happy with a sip of water now.
Perfect. How's it? You mentioned your team as well. How's it been in the pandemic? Are you getting to kind of meet together as a team? Have you gone remote?
Yeah, we've all gone remote. We all went remote actually a week or 10 days before the country went into lockdown, or there was an announcement to start working from home. We had started working from home before that, and I think it's been fine. It's just a little bit tricky when a new member joins the team, and we of course want to meet with them in person. We had someone who flew over from Australia, a doctor who flew over from Australia to join us in August, and usually we would have had a much more in-person interaction than we did. We could just meet for a quick lunch at an open space, and it was only a few of us could meet. So that's been a bit of a drawback, but we've been making do with Zoom as much as we can. We usually have like a lunch together every couple of weeks or so, or every week, but we're doing kind of virtual lunches and virtual drinks on Zoom as and when possible.
Amazing. That sounds good. It's important, isn't it, to try and the team ethic is obviously quite important to a lot of companies, not just kind of emerging companies and startups. So it is important to try and find ways to make sure that everyone kind of, especially with new joiners, that they're kind of embraced into the culture and get to know that. I know we've had a couple in our team as well. So and it's a nice problem to have. I guess so. Final question from me then today is, I think what's really important about the Founder Series is, it's watched hopefully by millions, but if it's not watched by millions, then hopefully it's watched by other founders that want to get a kind of a glimpse into some of the founders that are already well into their journey. So what's kind of the one bit of advice you would give to other founders out there, when they're kind of considering their startup journey?
Well, I mean, I'm not really qualified to give advice on this. I'm in the same journey as them, so I'd say I know as little or as much as they do. But from my own experience, I think one of the things that has consistently been a fantastic experience is to speak to other founders and to speak to other people who are starting. I'm very fortunate to have a few very good friends who have started companies as well. And there is just something about speaking to other founders. They just quickly get what you're going through, and they appreciate the highs as well as the lows. They've given me some of the best advice. So that's what I would recommend. Speak to as many founders, surround yourselves by as many people. That's been great for me. It might be very good for you too.
I think that I can't remember who it was, but I think in one of the previous series, someone mentioned the phrase, a good founder is a great founder is someone that knows what he doesn't know, essentially. Which I've always liked, and that kind of echoes and resonates with what you just said. It's important to get advice in all different aspects, because obviously you will be skilled in your in what you're doing, but it's a much bigger world out there. That's absolutely perfect. Thank you very much. We are going to turn now. We've got about 20 minutes or so for Q&As from those watching in attendance live. So if you have a question from Mikesh, do write it down. We've got one that's coming from Kieran, who is obviously an avid Founder Series fan, and he mentioned that in the last talk where we had George Beavis from Tide, he is the co-founder of Tide, the banking app, and he's switched to kind of set up a social ventures incubator, and he was talking about how his experience in the banking world helped him start both Tide and then the subsequent incubator. So Kieran's question is, what have you, it's kind of linked to what we spoke about at the start, but what have you taken from your time in banking, and banking being quite a different environment, I suppose, to a startup environment that you would find, and kind of how they mesh and work together?
Well, I think one of the things that is exactly what you said, to appreciate the differences and what that difference means in practice, what a certain atmosphere, working atmosphere, or let's say how different working atmospheres might bring out different things in different people. So it's working in different setups, including banking, has helped me appreciate that. And also, like I said, working with Joachim, who was my former super boss in banking, that it's a very demanding job. So the expectation is quite high, and that helps build that level of professional rigor. So that has helped me. Even now, it's just what it really means to take ownership and responsibility is something I learned while I was at Deutsche Bank, and I worked more closely with the MD of my team. So that is something that has remained, and I'm sure that is something that will be useful even down the line.
Of course, it's was there ever a struggle in kind of shedding some of that kind of formality from the banking world to, obviously you mentioned obviously the need to be to stay professionalism, but in a kind of, I guess, in a founder team environment than a startup, it is a little bit more informal. Was that quite an easy transition?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it wasn't too, I mean, okay, I mean, there's no way I would wear this to work when I was at Deutsche Bank. Used to wear a tie almost every day. That's not what I do now. So in terms of attire, etc., sure, you don't have that. In terms of rigor, I think, or in terms of some of the practices, the startup work has been far more difficult than the work I did at banking. It's just that it's not too stuck in some formal structures. You need to get something done, you just get it done the best way that you can, while being kind and friendly towards everyone. So that still remains. That's even gotten more strengthened in the startup. But the formality hierarchy isn't there, and it's for the better. I think we work very well with the level of hierarchy that we have. More than that would be very counterproductive.
No, perfect. No, thank you. We've got another question from Carolyn. Would you ever suggest a 10-day silent retreat for your founding team?
I see. Whether my founding team or not, I would suggest it based on your personality type. In general, I think it was it's an exercise. It's almost like you go to a place and you go through a 10-day session to learn a certain practice. You would really see its benefit down the line. It's not something that, let's say when you're picking up a new sport and you're learning a new instrument, of course 10 days is not going to make you enjoy the piano or the guitar by the end of it. If you keep practicing, it will become a part of something that you enjoy. So it's certainly not a relaxing exercise in those 10 days, but with time, it's very, very good. So if you're happy with that, yes, 100%, I'd recommend it. Secondly, it's a really, really good way of switching off from everything in the world and being by yourself. And I have found it to be quite useful. Pretty much everyone who I've spoken to who's been there, all of my friends have been there, have found it to be very useful. So from that regard, yes, I would recommend it. But it's only something you should do when you really want to do it. It will not be very beneficial if it's imposed. So that's the caveat I'd mention.
Yeah, I would not do well under any sort of imposed silence. I guess it's finding the right kind of activity for the founding team, but some sort of activity and bonding and some sort of time away is important.
Yeah, well, this is kind of like the extreme opposite of bonding. For 10 days, you don't speak to anyone. Nobody speaks to you almost. There's no reading, there's no writing. There's kind of even very limited eye contact. So, and generally it's advised you don't go with people who you know. So you can also kind of switch off from your relationships and attachments to some degree. So it's not a great bonding exercise.
Maybe not one for the whole founder team.
They can do it separately, and they might. It's a great journey into self-exploration, but not so much as a team bonding experience.
Perfect. Well, Mikesh, thank you very much for your time today. There's no more questions at the minute. We still have some time, so if anyone has finally got a burning question they really want to ask Mikesh while we have him here, please do speak now or forever hold your peace. I will quickly use this time to advertise our next Founder Series event. Obviously, Mikesh, you've been amazing, and we don't want to move on from you just super quick, but we need to advertise. So our next Founders Series event, the next in the series, is on October the 15th, same time, 5 till 6, and we have Jude Ower, who's co-founder of Playmob, which is a really cool kind of interactive educational games company. And she'll be speaking to me and in a similar format, just chatting with Jude about her experiences. She's also a member of the Global Entrepreneurs Programme, which the government runs, where they kind of help bring companies from outside of the UK into the UK. So quite a lot to discuss there. Mikesh, you've been great. It's been lovely to chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. It's been an absolute delight.
Perfect. Glad to hear it. Everyone watching, again, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your questions. We have been recording this session, so there will be a video of mine and Mikesh's conversation on the Tailored Vinters website. We will also release the chat as a podcast. So if you want to rewatch, if you want to share with friends, family, everyone, you can do. Watch out for it. We'll publicize it all over social media. And everyone can just like it and retweet and share, and that would be great. Thank you very much. Perfect. Mikesh, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Hopefully you can take the 10 minutes or so to relax before you dive back into work.
Thanks. It's been great, Geoff. Have a good evening.
You too. Take care.